Robert Reynolds, Earth-616. In March 1947, Canada's Department K and remnants of the United States Operation Rebirth pooled their resources to become Project Sentry, an attempt to not only recreate the Super Soldier Serum, but in post-war hubris, magnify its effects 100,000 times over. Unfortunately, within 30 years it had been divided into nearly 1,000 isolated sub-projects, with lab work farmed out to private contractors. The overall administration of the project was virtually nil. Precisely where all of its resources ended up over the decades, what they might have begun, and where they ultimately led, is currently unknown. Over 10 years later, Robert Reynolds, a meth addict, broke into the laboratory of an unnamed professor. It was there that he discovered the Golden Sentry Serum. Consuming the compound, Robert Reynolds gained the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. This act killed his partner and the lab's guards. He then asked the professor to make him more of the compound. Project Sentry, appalled at what their irresponsibility had wrought, persuaded Reynolds to let them test his powers at their facility, but they could not contain him for long, nor curb his desire to use his powers for the greater good of all, and the Sentry debuted before a world that had almost forgotten superhuman Samaritans. After trouncing the school bully who had tormented him, Reynolds sewed together a costume and made his debut as the heroic Sentry. The Sentry was an optimistic and socially accepted hero who stood in marked contrast to the mostly freakish nature of the other heroes. He had connections to Mr. Fantastic, Iron Man, the Hulk, Spider-Man, and Professor X. One of very few superheroes active during the years just prior to the Fantastic Four's emergence, Sentry gained new importance when the new wave of heroes rose to prominence. Almost instantly deducing Spider-Man's secret identity, he became a role model for the young hero, as well as an ally to the X-Men, an equal to Reed Richards, and a friend to the outcast Hulk. The Sentry even battled Dr. Doom alongside the Fantastic Four and defeated his greatest enemy, the General, with the X-Men's aid. During this period, the Sentry married the love of his life, Lindy, and took the young scout as his sidekick. Lindy got swept up in it all, excited at the prospect of meeting other heroes. She eventually learned of Robert's addiction but did nothing about it. She even feared that taking the serum must have awakened something of biblical proportions. She later stated that she should have killed him on their wedding night. The Void. The arrival of the Void, a shadowy monster that exploited its enemies' greatest fears, ended the Sentry's charmed life. The Void nearly killed Scout, drove Hulk into a rampage, and murdered over 1,000,000 people in Manhattan. Discovering that the Void had been the dark aspect of his own powers, the Sentry teamed with Reed Richards and Dr. Strange to create a system which made Earth's entire population, including Richards, Strange, and the Sentry, forget his existence. With the Sentry inactive and forgotten, the Void vanished. In reality, the Void was Reynolds' own repressed persona, powered by the Sentry's own powers. The General had captured Reynolds and brought him to mutant illusionist Mastermind, who implanted a mental virus in the Sentry's mind. This virus created delusions that if the Sentry used his powers, a devil would appear, intent on destroying the world. As a subconscious cry for help, Reynolds implanted his memories into the mind of comic book writer Paul Jenkins, who wrote the Sentry's repressed memories into a series of comic books. Years later, Robert's memories returned, and along with them the Void, who rampaged across Europe, murdering many members of the superheroes of Europe, as she. The Sentry contacted his former colleagues, but the only one who recalled their shared history was the Hulk. As the Void returned to Manhattan, the pieces began to fall in place and the Sentry's former friends assembled to defend him and the city. Remembering the dual nature of Robert's powers, Sentry and Reed Richards reactivated the Watchtower, dispelling the Void and making the world forget the Sentry once again. New Avengers. Later, however, Robert's memories of the Sentry again returned, and he demanded to be placed on the Raft, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s high-security prison for supervillains, claiming that he had killed his wife. Lawyers Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson, along with bodyguard Luke Cage and S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Spider-Woman, traveled to the Raft to visit the Sentry in order to find out what had happened to him and his wife. Soon after their arrival, the supervillain Electro staged a massive jailbreak, freeing almost 90 supervillains who then attacked Murdock, Nelson, Cage and Drew, along with the newly arrived Captain America and Spider-Man. During the ensuing melee, the group was confronted by the alien symbiote, Carnage. Foggy Nelson, thrown into the cell containing Robert Reynolds, attempted to convince the Sentry to help them. Without saying a word, the Sentry blasted through 9 levels of the complex, carrying Carnage into space, where he ripped the alien symbiote in half. Inspired by this adventure, the other heroes soon formed the New Avengers, but Sentry vanished before they could invite him to join them. The Sentry stayed in hiding but remained a person of great interest to S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, both of whom were fascinated by his powers and worried that they may lead to another Scarlet Witch situation. Eventually, S.H.I.E.L.D. and the new Avengers confronted the Sentry with several disturbing facts. The wife he claimed to have killed was alive, and the only reference in the world that could be found of the Sentry was in comic books, stories invented and written down by the imagination of a comics writer. Unable to face these shocking events, the Sentry fled. Resurfacing as Robert Reynolds at his home, the Sentry was again confronted by the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D., along with the Inhumans and the X-Men. He cried, saying that he had warned them of the Void's coming and that it was now too late. The group was suddenly attacked by the Void. Robert, along with the help of Emma Frost, discovered that the reason no one remembered him was not because of his own attempts to erase the Void, but because of Mastermind's manipulation. With this newfound knowledge, the Void disappeared, and Emma Frost resurrected the Sentry. The new Avengers offered him membership, partly to keep an eye on him and partly because they would need his power, which he accepted. The Sentry's headquarters, the Watchtower, reappeared on top of Stark Tower, where it supposedly had been originally built. Later, Yelena Belova attacked the Avengers and absorbed the Sentry's powers. After Belova defeated each of the Avengers, she was defeated by the manifestation of the Void, which enveloped and incapacitated her. The Sentry told Belova that absorbing his powers had exposed her to the Void, but if she answered his questions, he could send the Void away. AIM liquefied Belova before she should divulge any info. Later still, the Sentry was sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. to subdue a rogue Iron Man. During the course of the battle, Iron Man hacked into CLOC, the Sentry's robot prioritizing the warning system, and fed alerts of multiple false emergencies into the Sentry's head, leaving him incapacitated for a few hours. Looking for the truth. Having returned to the world, the Sentry captured the hearts of the public, with newspapers referring to him as the Golden Guardian, and he saved hundreds of lives on a daily basis. Reynolds' psychological problems, however, had worsened. Unable to reconcile that Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, and the Void were the same being, the Sentry contained the Void in a vault in the Watchtower. At CLOC's urging, Reynolds' psychiatrist Dr. Cornelius Worth entered the vault and found only a chair and a mirror. When Cornelius confronted Reynolds with this, Reynolds became confused and ran to the fairgrounds where he first gained his powers. Cornelius followed Reynolds to the fairgrounds where the Sentry and the Void had been fighting. The Void claimed that Reynolds transformed into the Void rather than the Sentry, and that the Sentry was merely a guilt-born byproduct of that transformation. With only half of Robert Reynolds' memories, the Void possessing the other half, the Sentry was not sure the Void was wrong. The Sentry chased the Void away and then explained to Cornelius why Reynolds had hired him in the first place. Reynolds subconsciously wanted someone to reveal the Void's existence to the world so he would no longer have to hide that aspect of himself. The Sentry told Cornelius how Reynolds really gained his powers as a teenager, by stealing the professor's Golden Sentry serum and ingesting it to get high. He also told Cornelius that he knew all along that the Void was never in the Watchtower's vault. He knew that if Reynolds believed that he believed the Void to be in the Watchtower, the Void would be there. This kept the world safe from the Void for as long as the Sentry could keep up the charade. The Sentry then visited Dr. Strange to determine if he was real or not. Strange tricked the Sentry into traveling to his old professor's research facility where the two men confined the Sentry in an illusionary realm where he was a mental patient and superheroes didn't exist in an attempt to prevent any further destruction. The Sentry broke free of the illusion and after confronting the professor who made the original serum, he traveled to Antarctica to confront the Void and discover what memories of Reynolds the Void has in his mind. The Void claimed that Reynolds had actually ingested a supersaturated, exponentially more potent, version of the Super Soldier formula that created Captain America. This was considered dangerous by the government because the Sentry's blood could be used to create more of the serum, perhaps enough for the entire world. Several failed attempts were made to kill him. Enraged by this revelation, the Sentry threw the Void into the sun, telling his enemy that he no longer needed him to balance his own actions of good. The Void promised to return. Civil War. During the Superhuman Civil War, the Sentry sided with Iron Man's pro-registration program. While trying to escape from a battle between the new Avengers, believing that every path he could choose would ultimately lead to the death of people he knew, the Sentry flew to the moon. There he was confronted by the Inhumans. Believed a threat, he was ordered to follow them to Black Bolt's presence in the so-called Blue Area on the moon. Then, after a discussion of the Civil War events with the, still unaware, Inhumans, he rekindled his friendship with them and almost resumed his past relationship with Crystal. He was then confronted by Iron Man himself, who finally convinced a still reluctant Sentry to join him, stating that he'll help Captain America, who is opposed to registration, understand that the world is changing. He later accompanied a SHIELD squad to battle Wolverine and told him that he didn't want to get involved but saw no choice. He claimed that he had to stop the ugly business even if that meant becoming part of it for a while. He then knocked Wolverine unconscious and handed him over to SHIELD. 3 days after the climactic battle of the Civil War, the Sentry publicly announced his support of the Registration Act. Additionally, he was recruited by Tony Stark to be part of the Mighty Avengers, the newest incarnation of the Avengers team. Mighty Avengers. While at first there was some dispute between the Sentry and his wife, Robert joined the team while Tony Stark and Ms. Marvel offered him assistance to battle his mental issues. He was seen as the most powerful member of the team, but, lacking in proper training on how to use his abilities, he, consequently, frequently apologized for his mistakes, such as causing damage to the city building and then again when he was thrown into a blimp. When Iron Man morphed into the new female Ultron, she analyzed the Sentry, stated his high power level and pointed out he was very difficult to terminate. He battled Ultron, with neither one seeming to be able to win, until Sentry had to break off to stop the SHIELD helicarrier from crashing into Manhattan. Ultron then initiated a Plan B, which involved killing Lindy, the Sentry's wife. An enraged Sentry attacked Ultron once more, but in an exchange of blows was knocked away. His teammates Ares and Hank Pym in his Ant-Man costume proceeded to infest Ultron with a virus intent on destroying it and allowing Iron Man to reform himself. Sentry, however, assaulted Ultron in retaliation for murdering his wife and almost compromised the Avengers' plan by nearly tearing Ultron's head off. Before he could finish, he was knocked away by Ms. Marvel. After Ultron's defeat, he returned to the Watchtower to find his wife, Lindy, alive and well, having apparently revived her himself after touching her. Robert was later shocked when he heard his wife, in a terrified state, secretly requesting that Iron Man find a way to either power him down or kill him before he would one day kill them all. The next day, a symbiote attack infected everyone in New York, including a few of the mighty and secret Avengers, with the exception of Sentry, Wonder Man, Ares, Ms. Marvel, Luke Cage and Iron Man. Sentry eventually had no choice but to knock out Janet, who had grown to giant size and was infected. When Iron Man managed to create an antidote, they tracked the symbiotes from Latveria, so the Avengers and SHIELD led an attack against Victor Von Doom. Unfortunately, Sentry, Iron Man and Doom accidentally go back in time. To get back, they needed to use the Fantastic Four's time platform. That mostly required Sentry, because whatever he does anywhen will be eventually forgotten. World War Hulk. When the Hulk and his Warbound attacked Earth, Sentry talked to Reed Richards and Tony Stark. Both men were able to convince Robert to fight off the Hulk upon his return to Earth, but not before the Sentry had a talk with Iron Man. Iron Man told Robert that they needed him, that he believed without him they would lose, and that despite their fears of what could happen when unleashing the Sentry's powers, Robert had a responsibility to act. A confrontation with the Hulk and Iron Man caused Sentry's Watchtower to drop straight down through Stark Tower, destroying it. Later in a confrontation between the Hulk and the Fantastic Four, Susan Storm tried to call the Sentry for help, but he did not answer the call. The President also attempted to convince the Sentry to fight the Hulk, but failed. The Sentry watched the battle between the Illuminati and a gigantic monster on the news, as most of the Hulk's actions, as well as the recent events, were televised. The Illuminati were victorious, but the Hulk modified the obedience discs implanted in them, making them want to kill each other. After seeing this, the Sentry flew out of his home to face the Hulk. Mr. Fantastic was ordered to kill Iron Man but was stopped by the Hulk, declaring that his return was for justice. Sentry arrived and engaged the Hulk in combat. Robert was no longer holding back, having lost control of his powers while going into battle, being in a frail mental state. After a while, he began to lose control of them. Sentry unleashed forces that nearly destroyed what was left of New York, but ultimately, the battle between the two Titans was ended after they burned each other out at the end of the battle, with the Sentry reverting back to Robert Reynolds and the Hulk back into Bruce Banner. Attributes. Powers. Chemically enhanced physiology. The Sentry's superhuman powers and abilities derive from Golden Sentry Serum. The experimental serum granted him photokinetic-based powers, essentially being fueled by the sun itself. His various powers seem to be based in molecule manipulation or reality warping, all stemming from his base solar-charged body. Though most of his powers and their limits are still unknown, the Sentry has been said to have the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. He is so powerful that Carla Sofin theorized in front of Norman Osborn that what happened after Scarlet Witch broke down would be nothing compared to what Sentry could do. Sentry has also fought Galactus. He was stated to be an Omega-level threat by Mr. Fantastic, and Nick Fury's intel classified him as power level 10+. During a meeting with Professor X, Emma Frost openly stated that the Sentry's powers are godlike, and during his time as a member of the Dark Avengers, Sentry's profile note that there is no limit to his powers and that he is nigh omnipotent, thus making him the strongest member in the Dark Avengers team. Following his return later on, the Sentry finally accepts his dark self, the Void, and merge with the entity, creating a being far more powerful than all his past incarnations. When considering all the impressive feat throughout the Sentry and the Void lifetime of struggle, the all-new merged Sentry can be said to be arguably the most powerful superhuman on Earth. Molecular manipulation. Following a confrontation with Molecule Man, Robert discovered he has the powers of molecular manipulation which he had used to revert himself from the liquid Molecule Man had turned him into. The extent of these powers are not yet known, but he was able to defeat the Molecule Man. However, it should be noted that unlike Molecule Man, Sentry has little control of his powers. Since the Void and the Sentry are essentially the same person with differing personalities, the Void's own shape-shifting might be a result of the Sentry's molecular manipulation. Additionally, Reynolds' molecular manipulation ability theoretically would give him potential regenerative healing abilities as well despite his nigh invulnerability. It has been theorized that the vast majority of his powers are derived from his ability to alter matter and energy and that he could simulate almost any superpower with enough practice and control. He seems to do this unconsciously as the Void when he changes shape and power sets. It is also possible that he had survived from being disintegrated by Morgan Le Fay due to the same power. Since losing his agoraphobia, and therefore gaining full control over his powers, in Uncanny Avengers, he has been able to utilize his power to manipulate molecules to even greater degrees than ever before. Materialization. Sentry learned he could craft and build various constructs or even sentient effigies by rearranging molecules by force of will. Either conjuring a miniature werewolf in the palm of his hand, erecting a force field able to deflect Terex the Tamer's energy waves with relative ease, and at his most uninhibited, create massive sand golems capable of downing a giant-sized wasp. Immortality. The Sentry is chemically mixed with the Super Soldier Serum. This makes him and the Void both immune to aging. Superhuman strength. The Sentry's strength varies greatly and depends on his mental stability. The Sentry possesses vast superhuman strength, granting him the ability to lift, press, far in excess of 100 tons easily. He is one of the strongest beings in the universe. He has demonstrated several astonishing feats of strength during his career, including easily lifting tremendous weights, ripping Carnage in two, taking Terex the Tamer's cosmic axe and shattering it with his bare hands, moving a cruise liner effortlessly, and his unrestrained power overloaded the Absorbing Man. The Void was even able to break the Hulk's limbs with relative ease, and the Sentry himself was able to easily kill Ares by ripping him in half. He can also absorb solar radiation for additional strength. The Sentry has yet to demonstrate an upper limit to his strength, but he has shown that it can rival the likes of the Hulk, although this depends on his mental state. The Sentry has also shown enough physical strength to be able to beat the Void into submission more than once with pure force when he was relatively stable, which shows a high degree of power. During his most recent battle with the Void inside of the Sentry world, Sentry demonstrate devastating feat in shattering the entire moon to reveal the Void whereabouts and then kill him easily by ripping him apart afterward. Following his fusion with the Void that granted him access to the combined might of both beings, Sentry has demonstrated an even greater degree of super strength, managing to easily overpower Scout, who had injected himself with the Golden Sentry Serum, to the point of effortlessly crushing his fist and breaking his neck. During an encounter with the Avengers, with Thor, Captain Marvel and She-Hulk in their ranks, the merged Sentry manhandle them and knock them all aside with ease. Superhuman speed. The Sentry possesses the ability to think, move, run, and react at superhuman speeds. He has been observed catching bullets and has also been seen moving far in excess of supersonic speeds. His speed on Earth is enough to be gauged as fast enough to move at orbital velocity, 5 miles a second. It should also be noted that the Sentry has numerously been depicted as able to fly to the sun in a matter of moments, where it takes light over 8 minutes. This shows that his speed during interstellar travels is several times in excess of the speed of light. He has recently shown the ability to travel an indistinguishable amount of light years in a very short of time in flight. Sentry's flight was described to be bending space and time through pure speed, and that the speed he was flying at was so fast that it was disorienting Thor. Sentry has even been able to occasionally match Thor's combat speed in battle. Thor has routinely matched beings with extreme combat speed, such as Gladiator and Silver Surfer. Nigh invulnerability, the Sentry is, for all intents and purposes, almost completely impervious to harm, unless he wills himself to be killed. He has shown no direct weakness. He has been seen surviving extremely harsh atmospheric conditions, including the vacuums of space. Nick Fury has stated that so far S.H.I.E.L.D. has yet to find a way to kill him, and even Iron Man's scanners found no physiological defects in the Sentry's body. Like all of his abilities, his durability depends on his mental state. He can go to completely no-selling class 100 level characters, but as soon as he wishes himself dead he could be killed in an instant, notably in Siege where he asked Thor to kill him. He has also been damaged when he requested to Hulk to punch him in during the Green Goliath's takeover of Manhattan to prevent himself from destroying everyone on the Earth. Self-sustenance, Sentry has admitted to Lindy that he does not need to ever use the bathroom. He also does not appear to have the need to eat either, as shown when his wife was eating a meal with him, and he only had a glass water in comparison. Superhuman stamina, Sentry's enhanced musculature is far more efficient than that of a human. As a result, his muscles produce no fatigue toxins. However, his stamina, along with the rest of his powers, greatly varies depending on his mental and emotional state. Superhuman agility, Sentry's natural balance, agility, and body coordination are enhanced to levels that are far beyond the natural physical limits of even the finest human athlete. Superhuman reflexes, the Sentry can react at superhuman speeds exceeding the equivalent of several times the speed of sound. As such, Sentry was able to catch a sniper bullet from a highly advanced Skrull gun. Sentry has in the past saved Cornelius Worth from a point-blank gunshot wound to head from being inflicted on him by the Void. With him taunting Sentry, asking if he was faster than a speeding bullet. Upon Sentry saving Dr. Cornelius, he says to the Void that he himself knew he could catch the bullet because the Void knew how fast the Sentry was to the nearest millisecond. Sentry has also reflected that he must exert control over himself for even a millisecond in battle, indicating that he operates in these time intervals. Superhuman senses, the Sentry possesses vastly enhanced senses. He is able to hear almost any sound at any decibel, pitch, and frequency. The only Earth creature who can detect sounds at the frequencies he can is a blue whale, 0.01 to 200,000 Hz. He has shown enough control to block out ambient sounds to focus on a specific source/frequency. He has remarked that he was able to hear a butterfly's heartbeat in Africa. The range of his eyesight is also far greater than that of a human being. He is able to detect a single person from hundreds of miles in the air and above cloud level. The full extent of Robert's other senses' superhuman capabilities is unknown. Flight, the Sentry possesses the ability to float by defying gravity, using his superhuman speed to fly far above hypersonic speeds, above Mach 10. He has demonstrated traveling to the Sun and back in a matter of moments, which would require him to fly at speeds faster than light. And during the Skrull's secret invasion he flew to Saturn, about 746 million miles distance, almost immediately, which required him either to move at many times the speed of light, still thought to be impossible in this spacetime, or to have bypassed space altogether, thus giving the impression that he had moved faster than light speed. He has also been stated to travel at many times the speed of light. One plausible explanation is that Sentry uses his absolute control of his molecular structure to mitigate and/or prevent his body from obtaining additional mass as he moves/flies at speeds far greater than light speed, although this has yet to have been proven or shown. And has also been remarked to fly at such speeds not even a god of Asgard could withstand. Sentry has also been able to fly with such force to behead and kill Atoma. Teleportation, on at least one occasion, Sentry has shown an ability to teleport in a blinding flash of golden light. Sentry teleported away. After meeting Nate Gray, he was also able to teleport from the Sun back to the Earth, and managed to get into an area which was protected by Reed Richards' force fields. Photokinesis, it may be theorized that the Sentry also has the superhuman ability to generate, control, and emit light. This ability to produce hard light constructs may be similar to those of Dazzler when it was revealed that the Void is just an expression of his repressed persona, and thus his creation. He has also used it to block an energy blast from Terex. Light projection, having absolute control over the light he produces, he can control its direction, frequency, color, amplitude, intensity, and duration. The Sentry can produce numerous effects with the light he manipulates. He can simply cause a bright glow all about his body. He can create a pulse of light on the order of several tens of thousands of lumens of power per second. The Sun produces at most 10,000 lumens of brightness at noontime, which temporarily blinds people with its brilliance. This ability has been proven to be able to calm down the Hulk, though it also reduces him to a childlike mentality who believes the Sentry and his wife to be his mother and father. Invisibility. Sentry can turn invisible by deflecting light and radiant emissions. Energy blasts. The Sentry can generate light, heat, kinetic force, and other forms of energy as powerful blasts and explosions of a yellow color. These blasts are usually generated from the hands and eyes. But he was always like to use it in the form of optic blast. The maximum power of these blasts is unknown. It has shown previously to be capable of burning Hulk's skin and leveling whole city blocks in the past. He has also shown the ability to emit omnidirectional blasts that were able to eliminate a large group of Atoma soldiers. He also killed Nova during Final Scourge event, blast a group of Thunder Guard for assaulting Asgard, and destroy the Hulkbuster armor with his optical heat beam. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.